Good day. It's time to rip and tear. Who knew that I'd be playing Doom my entire bloody life? From 1993 to 2020, each and every Doom game has been kick-ass. But before we take a look at the latest kick-ass masterpiece, let's first take a look and see where Doom came from.
In the first age, in the first battle, when the CPUs were still 486, one stood with its ravening awesomeness. It found no peace, and with boiling code, it scoured the PC landscape of all pretenders. To say that this game changed everything is a substantial understatement. Doom was the culmination of all that had come before, and it perfected the first-person shooter as we know it today. The gameplay and graphics were quite literally unprecedented. Wolf and Catacomb, while fun in their own right, are slow and stiff first-person shooters with very simplistic graphics and level design. The gameplay for Doom was neither slow nor stiff. You flew around the bloody levels like the Doom guy was on Surge mixed with Balls Guana. The weapons were not just a mass of boring pixels, but were instead celebrations of ultra-violence. The levels were complex and filled with high levels of detail unseen before in gaming. The gameplay was even further accentuated by the musical score. The beats in this game have long since transcended the MIDI format and have long since been given multiple metal remixes. The music, gameplay, and levels all combined to give the player an experience that was never before even contemplated. id Software delivered upon their very name. They found a game that could well and truly tickle one's id, and could make the player feel like a badass slaughtering the hordes of hell. Tempered by the fires of hell, its iron will stood steadfast through the passage that preys upon the weak, for it alone was the Hell Walker. In 1995, id Software had another hit, and that hit was Doom 2. id Software decided to keep it simple so it wouldn't be stupid, and instead chose to iterate on what had come before. This might have been seen as lazy, but instead, it's like adding a light and trigger spring to an AR. id Software iterated in the right places and gave us an experience that in many respects surpassed the first game. Doom 2 uses the same graphics engine and features only one new weapon, the double-barreled super shotgun. But the game introduces several new enemies, and that changes the Doom experience tremendously. The Mancubus, the Archvile, and the ever-annoying Revenant made Doom 2 into something new. Where once before you could stride the halls with confidence, you now had to fear the dark and be ready to be eradicated every time you turned a bloody corner. Doom 2 would later go on to be the cornerstone of most modding efforts due to its updated code. Doom 2 is an example of a sequel done right. It takes what works and simply gives you more of it. It alone was the Hellwalker, the unchanged predator who sought domination over all of PC gaming. It passed through the divide between 2D and 3D that none had ever passed before. Doom 3 was released in 2004 and once again changed gaming. It brought with it graphical fidelity and gameplay where other pretenders only brought better graphics and physics. Doom 3 was one of the few games from the early 2000s to have graphics that looked almost photorealistic. Sure, there were only a few character models, but what you got was simply breathtaking. The levels were more like corridors, but they were filled to the brim with great enemies that required a quick trigger finger to put down. The gameplay for Doom 3 was a modified id Tickler. You still shot everything in sight, but the game was structured in such a way as to keep you on edge. Gone was the epic metal soundtrack, and in was the creepiness. The game was extremely dark, and this added to the oppressive atmosphere. The game utilized an effective flashlight mechanic. You had to toggle a flashlight to lighten up a dark area. When you do this, you have to holster your weapon. This heightens the tension as there is a bit of delay when you have to shoot an enemy. This game was still Doom, but it iterated to give the player a new experience. The demon priests of Cod laid a trap to capture the Scourge of Hell. The priests brought down the temple of modern gaming upon Doom, and in Doom's defeat, the Cod priests entombed Doom into the sarcophagus of development hell, and for 12 years, Doom laid in silent suffering. Doom 4 took 12 years to be made. For part of that 12 years, it appeared that Doom 4 would have been a COD clone. But thankfully, wiser heads prevailed, and what we got was a first-person shooter of the highest order. There was no COD craziness here, just good old-fashioned ultra-violence. You would carry all your weapons at any one time, there were health packs, and the levels were not corridors and cutscenes, but instead giant arenas of doom to fight through. Alas, that was one major issue with the game. There were too many bloody arenas, and the gameplay would sadly get stale after a while due to the over-reliance on the game's primary selling point. The Glory Kill system. The Glory Kill system was a great idea, held back by its constant use. You stagger an enemy and then beat the shit out of him for a bit of health and ammo. This system made the game a bit too easy and a bit too tedious, but despite this, the game was still one of the best id ticklers in over a decade, and was helped a great deal by its Alpha Prime soundtrack. Enter Mick Gordon. Mick Gordon blasted onto the Doom scene with beats so amazing that I used to listen to them on a daily basis. The original Doom tracks were for decades second to none. But then comes Mick, with the likes of Hellwalker, BFG Division, and Rip and Tear. Doom 4 might not be 100% perfect, but it was, and still is, one of the best first-person shooters since Doom 3. It experimented with some new concepts, and hit or miss a few, but still accomplished being an id tickler.
So now that we know where we've been, let's take a look at where we are, and see if Doom Eternal in the space year 2020 can actually dethrone those masters of first-person shooting.
The gameplay for Doom Eternal can be divided into 4 different categories: shooting, glory kill, platforming, and exploration. And today we're going to be looking at all 4 of those elements through the lens of someone playing the game at Hurt Me Plenty difficulty. Each gameplay type feeds the overall gameplay whole, and each is integral to the Doom Eternal experience. The gameplay is not just fun. It is an all-engrossing experience that, like the original Doom, draws you in and doesn't let you go. The gameplay is also paced in such a way that you never get tired of slaying. It can be said that too much of a good thing can get tiresome.
With the notable exception of firearms and sexy time.
id Software paced the gameplay in such a way so that you are never doing the same thing ad nauseum. This fixes one of the major issues with Doom 4's gameplay. In that game, you are pretty much shunted from arena to arena with 1 or 2 boss fights here and there. That got old fast and ensured that the player would want to take a break after slaying the millionth bloody demon. The average level here is set up in such a way that you get breaks between demon slaying. The average level will work like this: you shoot a bunch of enemies, glory kill a few to get health, chainsaw 1 or 2 to get ammo, and then there will be a breather section where you have to spend a few moments figuring out where to go. Then more shooting and slaying, and then a platforming segment to challenge a different set of skills, and then finally a shooting segment to end the level. This setup ensures that the player is constantly engaged with something new every now and again, so that no one type of gameplay gets boring, and that each gameplay type is able to remain fun and fresh. Furthermore, each type of gameplay reinforces the other so that you have a smooth gaming experience, and you are never jarred by changing gameplay types. As this is a first-person shooter, the main type of gameplay is, of course, the shooting, and you carry all of your weapons on you at any one time, and some of the weapons will keep you slaying all night long, and some will gather dust at the back of the vault, never getting used. One of the ways the game keeps the shooting fun and filled with tension is that it only allows you to carry a small amount of ammo at any one time.
Just like in real life, there really is never enough ammo.
This means that you'll be switching from weapon to weapon as you try and take down the horde of enemies that you must do battle with. This game does love to send hordes of enemies at you, meaning that crowd control will generally be the order of the day. But you only have a limited amount of ammo to keep that crowd at bay, meaning that you will need to use the right weapon for the right enemy to ensure that you don't blow your ammo killing one enemy. The alternate fire modes are much more important in this game than in Doom 4. Here, you will need to use the alt-fire modes wisely, as they will often be the thing that will make the difference in the fight. This game forgoes any sort of handgun because, well, this is Doom Eternal, and a pea shooter is just too weak for its might, and starts you up with a shotgun. This weapon will be useful for the entire game, as it allows you to stun weaker enemies for glory kills, and its grenade launcher alt-fire allows you to disable enemies' hardpoints, thus making them a little more manageable. The super shotty is essential for taking out the internet maligned marauders. The machine cannon is cool, it sounds good, and it's a weapon that is never used after you get the chain gun. and that is due to its weak damage and lack of good crowd control abilities. The chain gun is a gift from the great Burt Gummer himself, and its alt-fire turret mode allows you to take on large groups of enemies quite effectively, and will be a major go-to weapon in the game. The plasma rifle is the other go-to weapon due to its ammo pool and effectiveness on enemies both large and small. Its alt-fires are less useful, however, and generally are not something that will be that important for survival. There is an achievement you can unlock that will allow you to unlock the Hell plasma gun that will give you some more damage output for a short time, and thus can help in stickier situations. The rocket launcher is not as useful as the previous games because it fires a bit too slowly to be useful and will generally only be used in certain circumstances that require you to actually slow down a bit. The ballista is also a bit too slow to be useful as well, and will gather dust accordingly. The BFG is primarily situational and should be saved for bosses and for taking on archviles. You also get a shoulder grenade launcher, and it is a gift from Talos himself, as it is a very effective crowd control weapon.
Like in the previous game, speed is essential for survival.
Doom Eternal's difficulty has been ramped up tremendously when compared to Doom 4. Even the fairly low difficulty of Hurt Me Plenty is pretty bloody tough, and ultra violence is not something to be taken upon lightly. You have to really get your ass moving in this game, and you can never just stand around like a slack-jawed gawker. You have to constantly move to avoid enemies, and if you stand still too long, you will get swarmed and killed forthwith. You need to always be looking towards crowd control and ensuring that not too many enemies are ganging up on you. Even the weakest enemy can hurt you, and you can go from full armor and health to half dead in seconds. You have to learn to switch weapons on the fly and incorporate what are almost combos into your gameplay. In Doom Eternal, you have a dash move and a double jump, and both have to be incorporated into your playstyle to survive. You have to get thy ass moving and away from the foul hell beasts. You have to master that dash move to dodge projectiles, and you have to be able to jump effectively in order to escape being pinned in. This game gives Doom Eternal a dimension that only the Jedi Knight games really ever had before. This is a game where mastering your moveset matters. Armor is another thing you have to watch out for as well. The game gives you the Flame Belch. It won't kill enemies, but will instead get them to spawn armor, and you must learn when to deploy it effectively. And this transitions nicely to Glory Kills. This system was epic in Doom 4, right up until you did the same canned animation for about the millionth time. Here, it is actually essential. Your health runs out fast, and health packs are few and far between. Glory kills are the easiest way to regain health, but unlike in Doom 4, they don't drop nearly as much, and thus you have to know when to glory kill and when to not. By being strategic with glory kills, you can hope to stay one step ahead of death. Ammo is another thing that has to be glory killed to refill, as ammo is rather scarce. You use the chainsaw to cut up enemies to get ammo. Your fuel regenerates, so you will never be out of ammo, but like with the glory kill system, you need to be strategic. As well, you will never be out of ammo, you will never have a huge stockpile either. All the limitations the devs put on the player creates an experience that is pretty much second to none. The game is just hard enough to keep you on your toes, but easy enough to make the player feel like a badass. This is a major accomplishment in balancing. Too hard, and the game feels like a slog, and the player gets bored. Too easy, and the player just breezes through levels and then gets bored and moves on. The difficulty for Doom Eternal is not bound up in bullet sponges and cheap enemies, but rather complex and rewarding gameplay mechanics that ensures the player will become immersed in the game and stays immersed in the game. Slaying demons is fun, but if it's all you do, it gets tiring fast. Doom 4 had the issue of being arena after literally bloody arena. This got seriously boring after a few levels and really made repeat playthroughs tedious. Doom Eternal, while still linear and featuring arenas, has more downtime for the player between fights. There is a bit of exploration in the game, and this allows one to cool down after shooting and stabbing, and gives one a feeling of accomplishment after figuring out where to go. The levels are not anywhere close to Raven Software levels, but they still provide an adequate challenge and ensure that the player feels like they are progressing through an area instead of walking from fight to fight. Doom 4 introduced platforming segments, but these were few and far between. Doom Eternal takes these way past 11.
Doom Eternal gets full blown, gets poked, and, most importantly, loads the spaceship with the rocket fuel and blasts off with its platforming past 29!
First-person platforming is never easy, and the only other game to get it really right was Mirror's Edge, and even then it had issues with motion sickness and indistinct jumping areas. Doom Eternal has some rather generous platforming boxes, and you will seldom find yourself missing jumps. The platforming and exploration each complement one another to make the gaming whole that much more than the sum of its parts. Many levels will have areas that must be reached with platforming, but the levels do not always have a giant jump gear sign, and thus the player is required to actually think and figure out where to go next. The platforming is balanced quite well, and it's just hard enough to be fun, and the penalty for missed jumps is not harsh in the slightest. The platforming is able to give the levels a life they might not have had otherwise. The gameplay for Doom Eternal is first-person perfection. Every element works with every other element to present a complex and rewarding experience that goes beyond the mere title of first-person shooter and puts this game in the same category as the Dark Forces games.
Yeah, I said it. This game definitely deserves to be mentioned in the same breath with that pantheon of greatness.
Doom Eternal features a great many collectibles to be found throughout the game, and there are numerous upgrade paths to follow. This is another tie-in to the exploration aspect of the gameplay. Each little token and crystal makes you incrementally stronger and rewards you for going off the beaten path. Thankfully, you never become seriously OP, and thus the game remains a serious challenge even on New Game Plus. The enemies for the game are quite well made, and each enemy will have a good chance at killing you. Many old standbys return, and many enemies will have certain ways to kill them. The Architron can soak up a good deal of punishment, unless you blow off its gun arm with a well-placed grenade. The Cacodemon is even more vicious here than in the previous games, but a well-placed grenade will take him down and out without too much difficulty. The hardest enemy in the game is, of course, the old bastard himself, the Archvile. He was introduced in Doom 2, and he blew many a player to cinders. In Doom 3, he was hard, but not that bad, and in Doom 4, well, he was too hardcore for that game. Here, he is second only to Satan himself. He spawns in numerous buffed enemies, he has high health, and a flame shield. When you start seeing buffed enemies start to spawn in, you know you're in for a rather, shall we say, rough experience. When he spawns in, you better hope you have a BFG shot handy, otherwise he'll be dominating the battlefield. The game features two mini-bosses, the Doom Hunter,
Cuphead 2. Cuphead 2.
Despite his rather intimidating theme, he is easy enough to take down, blast him with plasma, and then cut his face off.
The Marauder, ladies and gentlemen. The bane of all gaming journos everywhere.
Sure, he talks a big game, but he's not quite as hard as he would lead you to believe. The Marauder is not a hard mini-boss, at least on Hurt Me Plenty. He has an obvious telegraph, and all you gotta do is wait for the telegraph and then shoot him in the face with the super shotgun. You gotta master that dash Rendar in order to fight the Marauder effectively, as you will need to dash to avoid his attacks. Once you figure out how to dodge, you'll be able to take him down like a boss. The only time he ever gets really hard is in small arenas, wherein dashing is much more difficult and you have a lot less slop room to move around. Still though, if you have a proper sense of situational awareness, you will still be able to prevail. Today, y'all are in for a treat. We are looking at the game rendered on two different graphics cards. At the low end, we have a GTX 970 rendering the game at all medium in 1080p screen resolution, and at the high end, we have an RTX 2060 Super rendering the game maxed out, and the processor I'm using for this game for both high and low is a Ryzen 3 220G running at 3.5 GHz. This game is very well optimized for both high-end and low-end GPUs. At the low end, I got 60 FPS for most of the game, with a few dips to 40 FPS on some of the busier segments. What's rather interesting is, maxed out with the RTX 2060 Super, I got dips to 40 at the exact same segments. The game, quite simply, looks gorgeous on both low and high systems. The enemies are stylized excellently and look absolutely exceptional. The levels are filled to the brim with great texture work and excellent comic book style details. One thing I do want to point out is the fact that the humans that you see in the game and frequently don't look that bad, as humans generally have a rather uncanny valley look to them in most games. The Doom guy looks great as well, no matter what armor you have on, and the animations are quite sexy to look at indeed. All told, you got a major graphical powerhouse going on here. Sound design for the game is also exceptional as well, and the game's voice acting is still pretty excellent, and we shall touch upon that later. The music is actually better than Doom 4's, and is actually on par with the music in the original Dooms, and is almost equal to Sonic Mayhem's Quake 2 soundtrack. Mick Gordon really outdid himself in this one. Many of the tracks are loops, but you will find yourself rocking out to them regardless for up to 20 minutes at a time. The best tracks, in my opinion, are the following: The Only Thing They Fear Is You, Meat Hook, Doom Hunter, and Super Gornest. Needless to say, the Doom Eternal soundtrack has been at the top of the charts when I go to the track.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the part you've all been waiting for, the story. To say the least, it blew away all of my expectations.
The story for Doom Eternal should not be looked upon as that of just a first-person shooter. It is instead a game that transcends the first-person shooter archetype and enters another. This, dear viewer, is a superhero shooter. The story is told in such a way that Doomslayer becomes less a first-person shooter protagonist and instead fills the archetype of superhero. The game also gives justification for everything that happens both in this game and the one previous. This game gives context for everything as well, and thus gives the player a much more well-rounded experience.
But most of the time, you will be at a loss for what is going on, because you're going to be too busy a-ripping and a-tearing.
The story is damn good, but what I found is that upon repeat playthroughs, it's very hard to remember just what is going on sometimes. The game is so engrossing in terms of gameplay that one can easily forget just what one is fighting for.
He who fights monsters, man.
I am not sure if this is a good or bad thing. I think this is once again a great element of balance. For your first playthrough, you will want to soak up all the great lore and see Doom Guy fight his foes, but on repeats, you just want to get on with it and get to killing. And if that is the case, then once again, id Software found a way to have double the cake and double the fun. The game begins with the world crying out for a hero. The Earth has been invaded by the fell forces of chaos, hell, totally hell, and damn, that is a huge pentagram. This intro is straight superhero classic, and it's probably one of the best video game intros of all time, and the single best in all of non-modded Doom. The intro is so effective due to its presentation. Its goal is to inspire the player not to simply rip and tear, but to save the people of Earth from the hordes of hell. It makes the player, in just a few moments, invested in what they are doing, and does not present the player with unstructured gameplay. This is a key story element all throughout the game. Everything you do in this game has some structure to it, even if it is only picked up subconsciously. You may not know the backstory of the enemies you are tearing and ripping, but you at least have some idea of why you are killing them, even if it's only, gotta save the Earth from the eviltons. The game has a fairly well-structured plot format, even if it can be hard to follow sometimes. You either have to kill something, or find a gubbin to kill something. In your first mission, you have to kill a Hell Priest. The Hell Priests act a great deal like villains from Fist of the North Star, and are quite entertaining right before the Doom Slayer unflinchingly kills them. As you play throughout the game, you get hints that the Slayer actually knows them personally. Between each level, you head to the Doom Slayer's sweet Doom Fortress. The Fortress of Doom is filled with tons of sweet swag, including a man cave. Also, he owns a book about how Flint Haggard got retconned, which is a touch that only I and a few others really appreciate. Throughout the game, you can unlock other bits of swag, such as album covers and paintings. You can also unlock new Doomslayer skins.
For only the low price of your immortal soul.
Thankfully, this isn't an EA game. You unlock them by finding easy-to-locate items, and yes, you can get the original Doom Guy suit, and by the great Talos, is it glorious. You can also unlock the Praetor suit from the previous game as well, and it is still only okay. The Doom Eternal suit, which is ditched as soon as possible, is also okay. It's too over-designed and has too many bits and bobs hanging off of it, but I do like how it's a bit of an unholy amalgamation of the Praetor suit and the classic suit. In terms of art, I have to say that the UAC Marine suit fits the game far better, as it looks more badass and is more aesthetically pleasing due to its much more clean lines. Also, after every mission, there will be a new radio broadcast from the Ark. The Ark is the international human resistance against the demonic hordes.
Thank Ysmir. The writers for this game were intelligent enough to know that 1. Planets are pretty damn big, and 2. That it would take some time for the demons to take over a planet as large and as populous and as well armed as the Earth.
The Ark will talk about how the demons have been beaten back, but they will usually provide some warning about avoiding the Slayer. The Ark troops are never seen in the game, but I'm glad that the writers added this faction to the game so that the player has a faction to actively fight for. I will say that the Ark is a pretty dumb name. It stands for Armored Response Coalition. Sure, it sounds kinda cool, but why the specific mention of armored?
After you kill your first Hell Priest, or Deeg as they are known in Argenta, it's time to track down 2 more.
This segment of the game has the Slayer trying to find a special science gubbin so that he can track down the other 2 Hell Priests. This is also the part of the game where the plot gets a little indistinct, and you will find yourself trying to figure out what the hell is going on. This part of the game also introduces the main villain for the game, the Con Maker.
One of my issues with Doom 4 was there was no clear-cut villain, it was just hell. Here, we finally have a clear-cut villain to fight against. And the Con Maker is deliciously evil.
Just about everyone you meet in this part of the game tells the Slayer that he shouldn't try to save the Earth and that humanity is not his responsibility. You can't save everyone, right?
The Slayer's best line in the game.
You also find out that no, the Slayer didn't betray anyone. Rather, it was Valen.
I knew it. It seemed altogether too convenient for a commander of Babylon 5 to... Wait, wrong franchise.
In Doom 4, it was implied that the Doom Slayer had actually turned traitor and served the forces of Hell. In an awesome turn of events, it was actually a Knight Sentinel named Valen. Oh, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, in this game, if you care at all about what's going on, you would better read all the codex entries. Otherwise, you will have no idea what some of the actions in this game really mean. Also, you have to find codex pages to unlock the elements in the codex, which is another reason to actually get out and explore. When you meet the Betrayer, you get a special gubbin and he gives you a magic knife. File that detail away for later, unless you played Doom 4 and you already know what is going on. You get the science gubbin, and then you talk to King Novik. He powers up your gubbin and then tells you that you don't have any reason to fight. But he doesn't stop you, and then you head out back to the fortress and find out where another Deeg is hiding out. One of the levels you fight through is a train level, and it is glorious, but alas, is over too soon. And like something straight out of Fist of the North Star, the Deeg you're hunting down taunts you as you fight to him, but little does he know that he is already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. You fight to him, and there is no boss fight. You just cut his motherfucking head off like a boss. And I love how the game, once again, encourages investment in the player. When you kill a Hell Priest or complete a level objective, that objective's completion is acknowledged in the end tally screen, thus giving the player a sense of accomplishment and inspiring the player to keep playing instead of just moving on. Being invested in the game beyond just playing the game is really key for keeping one's interest. Your next couple of missions do not have you going after the last Hell Priest. Rather, you have to blow up a super gore nest.
Thankfully, the only bloody gore nest in the entire goddamn game.
After it's blown up, it's time to rescue old Sammy himself. He has taken over the Ark and is held up in the main Ark base. Unfortunately, the demons just sacked it, and Heidi is, shall we say, half the man he used to be. This level is pretty bloody good, and there's a few little humorous segments here and there. After you rescue Samuel Hayden, he will join Vega as your Cortana for the game. And thank Ysmir did they provide some much needed character to the game itself, and they really work well as supporting characters. And the voice acting for both are absolutely excellent. And no, in both this game and the previous game, Samuel Hayden does not sound anything like Peter Cullen, and instead sounds more like Lance Hendrickson, which is pretty bloody amazing indeed.
And now it's time to get your ass back to Mars.
The Mars levels are my favorite in the game, as they're the most epic and memeable in the game. You have to get to Mars to get to a city, and then take a portal from that city to another city where the final Hell Priest is hiding. In order to accomplish an epic goal, you must accomplish some epic deeds. Epic deed the first, you shoot a hole into Mars. This is now a epic meme, and it's an epic meme for a reason. First, Doom Guy gets really frustrated when he can't actually shoot the BFG 10K, and then when he finally does, it is glorious. If you thought blowing a hole into Mars was cool, the next thing you gotta do is you have to shoot yourself out of a cannon.
Doom Guy needs no weapons, he is the weapon!
This of course begs the rather obvious question. If Doomslayer can tank that, why do any of the enemy attacks hurt you? I guess you could say that the Doom Guy uses the frustration system. He doesn't have an ego, but he does get more and more angry as he gets hit, and eventually he gets so angry he decides to stop fighting and just decides to go to another universe that is a bit more, shall we say, salubrious. So you head down to Mars proper, visit the lost city of Hebeth, and finally take a slipgate to the Doomslayer's past. The past of the Doomslayer was kept rather coy in Doom 4. We didn't know if it was the original Doom Guy or a new one. There were a few hints here and there that he might be the original, but we never knew for sure. Here, we learned that id Software actually gives a damn about the fans. We learned once and for all that the Doomslayer is really Doom Guy. But according to the book in the Fortress of Doom, he is sadly not Flynn Taggart, but instead possibly Buddy DeCote or something along those lines. We learn from this level and from the Codex that an Outlander appeared, muttering gibberish, and he was put into the arena.
And now, it's time to deep dive into that lore.
Argent Denur was a planet far from Earth. The Argenta people raised mighty constructions and had high technology. Then a powerful alien race appeared and conquered them, and they were called the Makers. In exchange for being worshipped as gods, they gave the Argenta even more advanced technology. And thus the Argenta spread across the stars by sending out sentinels. The Codex is written from a positive perspective about how the sentinels spread knowledge, but by reading between the lines, we learned that the Argenta were actually galactic conquerors and that they took over numerous planets. Criminals and outlanders were put into the arena to fight for their lives, and their only reward was an honorable death on the front lines. In a move so awesome that I was literally not expecting it, we finally get to hear, after 27 long years, the Doomslayer's voice.
Guts. Huge guts. Kill them. Must kill them all.
The voice for Doom Guy is excellent. He is not a living avatar of rage, but instead he is a man perpetually on his last legs. Rip and tear his only mantra as he tries in vain to stem the tide of demons. Rip and tear is not a mighty war cry, but rather a final intonation of a dying man.
And the Argenta missed the point entirely.
The Doom Guy rises high in the Argent Denur society and eventually becomes a major military leader, much to the annoyance of the elitist leaders of Argent Denur. Another thing that the Argenta misinterpreted was the Doom Guy's warning. He warned of demonic hordes and, you guessed it, the Argenta and the Makers sought them out and formed a pact. They mixed the Sentinel energy with Hell energy to form Argent energy. This pact with Hell would corrupt not only Argent Denur but many other worlds. Earth is being invaded for souls, which are a part of Hell energy, and all this energy is being shunted to the realm of the Makers. So yes, even in this cosmic adventure, it all comes down to pure and simple greed. Before the events of Doom 4, the Slayer leads a rebellion against the Argenta leadership. That is, of course, betrayed by the Deeg priests, and the Slayer gets stuck in Hell itself. As you proceed through this city, you see more and more flashbacks until you finally found out that Doom Guy was enhanced by the Sammer Maker, aka Samuel Hayden, just don't tell anybody. And Captain America style, the Slayer is put into the Divinity Machine and turned into the demigod not of rage and destruction, but rather of justice. My fan theory is that the Divinity Machine works much like the Super Soldier Machine in Captain America. It brings out the most prevalent traits in a person. In the Doomslayer, it brought out his empathy and desire to protect others. Oh, we joke and meme that the Doomslayer is too angry to die, and of course he is to a degree, but let's take a closer look at what the Doomslayer actually does in Doom 4 and Doom Eternal. He never harms a single innocent civilian. Even civilians he should want to bash about the head and shoulders. When he arrives on the Martian moon moon of Phobos, he could kill the lot of these guys, but he just strides past them. He could kill this keycard guy, but just uses his keycard. A Black Templar Space Marine, a good guy, would certainly not show so much restraint. In Doom 4, the Slayer is visually angry at all the human corpses he comes across, and in Doom Eternal, he takes upon the quest to save humanity, despite everyone telling him that it is not any of his business.
And awesomely enough, they are right.
This Doom guy is not from this universe. In the re-released Doom 64, there is a secret level where we learn that the original Doom guy chose the path of perpetual torment. So Doom guy is fighting all of these foes, taking all of this pain because he legitimately wants to save people. The boss fight for this level is against the Gladiator, and you will indeed be entertained. It is a fairly fun boss fight that can be a little bit tricky here and there, but if you have mastered the moveset, you will be able to persevere. You kill the final Dig, and by doing this, you are excommunicated from the Night Sentinels. And like the hero that he is, Doom guy does not fight these guards that show up. A Flesh Terror Space Marine wouldn't have thought twice about throwing down with these guys.
With the 3 Hell Priests dead and the Super Gorness closed, it's time to take the fight to the Khan Maker herself and show her the true meaning of pain.
We then get another really good bit of writing. Since the Khan Maker is all-powerful, shouldn't she just be able to stop the Slayer herself? She doesn't, but she does fuck up your fortress, but in an ultimate Trollolo move, and without missing a beat, the Doomslayer powers up the fortress with his Crucible, and gets right back to slaying. Since he's using that demonic Crucible to power the Fortress of Doom, he's gotta get another one. Probably that demonic Crucible belonged to a Marauder at some point. You now head out in search of Doom Guy's Crucible. You find it still lodged in the brain of the Titan of Hell. Doom Guy retrieves it, and this raises the Titan to smashy smash more of Argent D'Nur, and possibly be a threat in later games. Now you have the Crucible, and you get to slice and dice even the most powerful enemies in one hit. It's even more fun in New Game Plus, as it makes certain hard fights rather trivial. Just be sure to not accidentally deploy the bastard and kill one weak gutty zombie. It is now time to fight your way all the way to the top and take down the Khan Maker. You start at the very bottom in Hell. You get to fight a demonic hell beast and finally enter the world of the Makers themselves. The art design for this world is nothing short of excellent. It's cleaner and brighter than Hell, but if anything, it's even more off-putting. It's sterile, cold, and just as intimidating. Here, you've got a lot of jumping puzzles, and they can be a bit of a challenge to say the least. A new enemy is introduced, and it's rather easy to defeat it with just a headshot. We also learn about the Khan Maker and the Makers themselves. The world of the Makers elects a Khan Maker out of a group consciousness, and every time a Khan Maker dies, a new one is created. However, the current Khan Maker has been twisted and corrupted by the Argent energy and thus refuses to relinquish power and rules the world of the Makers with an iron fist, and generally acts as the Maker's sole consciousness. The Makers once had access to a computer that was essentially God, but apparently the God computer has gone missing. The Khan Maker has grown weary of the epicness of the Slayer and thus decides to send the Icon of Sin to Earth. The Doomslayer is able to thwart her plans by hitting the controlling heart with a knife given to him by the Betrayer. The Betrayer betrayed the Argenta because Hell stated that it could resurrect his son.
Unless it's for a fiddle of gold and a fiddle contest, Rip Charlie Daniels, don't ever make a deal with the devil.
Hell technically kept its bargain. He was brought back as the Icon of Sin, and the Icon of Sin eventually came under the control of the Khan Maker, and she controls it with the Betrayer's son's heart. By killing the heart, the soul of the son is freed, but the Icon of Sin goes out of control and heads for Earth anyway, and of course let's cue all the epic memes. The longer the Icon of Sin grows, the harder it will... Wait, I think I got that one wrong. Anyway, it's time to finish the fight, and you head back to Earth. And in doing so, you have to leave Vega behind, and he drops this bombshell.
System acquired. Setting the course for the Earth dimension now. I can see now. Am I the father of Brandon?
Oh my god! That's why he needed so much cooling.
You then have to fight the Con Maker herself, and this is where I feel the game peaks. The Con Maker is either A, the mastermind, or B, the flunky behind this universe's hell invasion, and thus she should be the final boss for the game as she is the most thematically important. The boss fight is fairly fun, but way too easy on Hurt Me Plenty. You just shoot the shit out of her and then you give her your meat hook, and then shout, "Be gone, thought!" We do get a good look at what she really looks like, and as you can see, she has suffered the fate of all who embrace chaos. After she succumbs to the might of the Slayer, this happens.
This is one of the great elements of Doom Eternal. The no is never actually explained, thus allowing for the fans to come up with some cool theories.
My personal theory is that the voice is Satan, and my further theory is that Satan is so powerful that he controls the demons in all universes simultaneously, and that he is shouting "No!" for one of two reasons. One, he saw the Con Maker as a friend and is sad that she is dead. Or two, he sees the beginning of the end of his hell realm in this universe. Either way, the "No!" is way cool.
The harder you pound the Con Maker, the longer... Wait, what is that line?
It is now time for the epic rock-off, and these are some of the hardest and coolest levels in the entire fucking game. The final boss fight with the big boss is sadly not that great.
This is more of an epic boss fight and not much of a game boss fight.
The boss is actually pretty easy. There is plenty of ammo and plenty of crucible charges, and the Icon of Sin does very little damage. Also, that must be one tough building, cause if his Icon of Sin is that hard, why does he not just smash the building? All you gotta do is blow off the Icon of Sin's armor, get him naked, and then blow his flesh. Blast his unprotected squishy bits. There we go. And then the game ends. I found the Marauder boss fights to be way more fun as they kept you on your toes a bit. Here, it's just shoot big thing until it dies. I would have rather liked to have seen a super-powered human-sized character with the Doomslayer's abilities, as this would have been a test of skill rather than endurance. Still though, it is a bombastic final battle for one of the greatest shooters of our time.
The future of Doom Eternal is pretty bright. This is not going to be a game that is played once and then discarded. This is a game that will be played forevermore.
Doom Eternal is quite simply a fun game. The levels are fun to fight through, and there are a great variety of enemies that are thankfully quite challenging, and the story is extremely engaging. You can actually like Doom Guy and root for him to succeed. This has all the hallmarks of a game that one plays again and again for decades, because at the end of it, it is a true game. As of this video, I have completed Doom Eternal 3 times so far, and have racked up 34 hours, and I cannot wait to play it again and again. The future of Doom Eternal looks brighter than that of many games. There was an anti-cheat program that was added in an update that worked the game, but after fan outcry, id Software removed it, and as of this video, a few cool elements have been added since launch, including a new empowered demon that drops extra loot when killed, and a few other elements as well. This is updating done right. Just what you would expect from a Ysmir level game like Doom Eternal.
As gaming progresses, the greatest game of all time will continue changing, and the list of greatest games of all time will grow longer and longer. Doom Eternal is indeed one of the greatest games of all time, and it's one of the greatest sequels of all time, right up there with Jedi Knight 2 and Turok 2. Is it the greatest first-person shooter of all time? Well, you be the judge. In any event, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you good Wolfenstein and good Catacomb 3D, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you this great content.